building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our vision, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. If you're tired of this pandemic, this is a message for you. All right? If you're so it's for everybody, right? If you're disgusted at the behavior and actions of some people in and around you, this is the message for you. If you're eager to assign blame, it's a good thing you came this morning. If you're thinking, we were so darn close, and a bunch of unvaccinated Neanderthals ruined it for the rest of us, this is definitely the message for you. If you're fed up with the vaccine debate, if you've divided the country into the noble, upstanding vaccinated and the selfish, stupid, unvaccinated ones, you need to hear this message. Or if you think the world is broken up into the good liberal citizen and the far-right anti-vaxxer, get comfortable because you are in the right place this morning. If you're not taking the vaccine because you're skeptical about the pandemic for some reason, or have concerns about the safety of the vaccine, or don't trust the medical establishment that's done you wrong so many times before, I'm really glad you're here. No matter where you stand on the current crisis, we're in this together. Whether we like each other or not, we're in this together. And now with the Delta variant surging, and children under 12 not eligible for the vaccine, and many of us will be sending our precious, beloved children back to school in the coming days, it's a bit unnerving, to say the least, especially with officials passing laws that don't allow for mask mandates in schools. Today, if you're vaccinated, you can no longer assume immunity. Today, the unvaccinated are exponentially more at risk of dying and getting sick than ever before. By the way, I should probably tell you now, this isn't a sermon about the pandemic. It's about love. If you had heard me talking prior to my getting the vaccination in April, you would have heard me saying things like, I can't even imagine going back to not wearing a mask in crowded places. I can't even imagine shaking hands again. I was like, kind of gross. I don't want to shake people's hands. I was like, I'm kind of glad we're not, even though I always love shaking hands. It just seemed like these were vestiges of a bygone era. And people would say, I don't know if we'll be able to hug each other again in church and other places, or go to movie theaters full with lots of people, and I felt this way. But then, 2 weeks after my second shot of the vaccine, I began to reclaim my life. I stopped wearing my masks in most situations, and I was hugging people, I was shaking hands, high five, you name it. I was visiting people in their homes. I was going to meetings again with real people, not just on the screen. It was wonderful. I even had the opportunity to travel and see family who I hadn't seen in about a year and a half. And life really felt like it was returning to normal. It was something I didn't think I was ever going to experience again. And boy, it was really quick when I finally, it came on. And I'm like, wow, here we are. This is amazing. It was lovely. It was natural. So when this new variant changed things again, I became one of those people who looked at the willfully unvaccinated with scorn. How can they be so selfish and not do their part to end the pandemic? Does that sound judgmental? Because you may have to pray for your pastor. Because I feel that way a lot. I'm as human as everybody else. So remember what I said. This is not really a message about COVID-19. It's about how judgmental and resentful and divided we are and what we can do about it. Division is happening in families, in workplaces, cities, churches. And let's be clear, when it's with strangers, it's a lot easier. But when it's people that you're in covenant with, it's a lot harder. You expect more from those people close in. And I'm told that expectations are just resentments waiting to happen. Expectations often lead to disappointment. Disappointment leads to resentment. Resentment leads to anger. And anger often leads to regret. Anytime you have expectations, you're set up for a resentment. Expectations often lead to disappointment, which leads to resentment, which leads to anger, which leads to actions and words that we often regret, which in turn turns to more division and polarization and problems. So how do we circumvent this train of events? Especially in a time of such incredible change, because change itself wreaks havoc on expectations. If I expect to have a job until I retire, and then I get downsized, or I expect to be with my spouse for as long as we both shall live, and then she decides to leave, or you expect to move on campus as a freshman and the coronavirus keeps you home, change wreaks havoc on expectations, which leads to disappointment, and the train of division has left the station. 1 week, they tell us it's good to wear a mask. Then it's not good to wear a mask. Then it is. And then we don't have to. And then we do have to again. We're told the pandemic's almost over. And then a couple months later, it's not over. And in fact, it's even worse. This is a setup for anger and for distrust and for misinformation. And in this condition, people start turning on each other. But when you're in covenant with each other, you're called to a higher level of relationship. I can't help but think of Moses from the Hebrew Scriptures when he was leading the Israelites out of slavery. 40 years, it says, they wandered in the desert. They were in covenant. But Moses had to put up with a lot of rancor and division over all those years. We're going to starve, they said. You're going to kill us. We were better off as slaves in Egypt, they argued. If Moses were around today, he would not be surprised to hear people saying, I hate these masks. You're taking away our freedom. I'm not taking no stinking vaccination. You're destroying the economy. Give me liberty or give me COVID. He heard it all, Moses. At one point, when the Israelites were complaining of dehydration in the desert, it says God told Moses to talk to a particular rock, this big rock, and that water would come out of it. Moses was not as calm and collected as Anthony Fauci is in his briefings. And so Moses berated the people. He gathered them around the rock, and then he berated the people, and then he hit the rock with his staff. And it says water came flowing out of the rock for all to drink. But for this, Moses was told that he would not be allowed to enter the promised land. What did he do to deserve such a punishment? There are so many opinions about that question today, as there were opinions of the Israelites back when they were in the desert. Some say it's because he showed anger. But that doesn't make any sense, because there's nothing wrong with anger if it's directed at the right things. But remember, he was told to talk to the rock, not to the people. He talked to the people and he hit the rock. He was supposed to talk to the rock, not to the people. The lesson for us today has to do with how and to whom we express our anger and frustration about what's happening during this pandemic. There's nothing wrong with being angry about needless suffering and needless death. There's nothing wrong with being angry about misinformation spreading needless suffering and needless death. But the vitriol that is being spewed at Dr. Fauci by anti-vaxxers, or at anti-vaxxers by vaxxers, will keep us all from reaching the promised land. We have every right to be angry, but it matters how and to whom we express our anger. Anger unresolved, unexpressed, and misdirected leads to problems, leads to violence, leads to all kinds of problems. The test is not how do you act when everyone agrees with you. The test is how do you respond when we disagree. Because how you treat others when you don't agree tells me how you will treat me when we don't agree. 13 years ago, when we brought Bishop Carlton Pearson and Pastor David Smith and the New Dimensions congregation into All Souls, I was shocked and I was surprised at some of the people who I thought would be really supportive of us and who would champion this change, who actually left in anger. And some of the people who I was sure were going to leave stuck around and supported us. I was so confused about this. I didn't know what was going on. I'd been in ministry about 9 years, and so I went to talk to the minister emeritus of this church at the time, my predecessor, Dr. John Wolfe. He'd been a minister for over 45 years, and so I said, "What's happening, John?" And he explained a lot of things to me, and one of the things he explained was, don't just look at how the people act towards you, the people who agree with you act towards you, but look at how the people who agree with you act towards the people they disagree with. Because then you'll see how they will treat you when they disagree with you. Eventually, they are going to disagree with you. Don't look at how your fiancé treats you when she's happily in love with you. Look at how your fiancé treats his ex. That's going to tell you what you need to know about your fiancé. How people act under stress and in conflict tells you a lot more about that person, about what they're really like when you need them. It's okay to be angry and frustrated by people who disagree with us, but how we choose to express that anger and that frustration tells us more about us than it does about the person we are angry with. What if, instead of taking your rage out on the person who will not take a COVID vaccine, you channel it into the gross inadequacies in the American medical system that fails and forgets and bankrupts so many people, so that so many people no longer trust it? You won't give me medical coverage. We don't have universal medical coverage, but now we have a pandemic, and but everybody can have the vaccine because it's going to affect everybody else. When it was only affecting my family, you didn't care about universal coverage. You weren't giving away free stuff. And so let's focus that anger not on the people who've been going through all this, which doesn't help anyway, but how about focusing that anger on the inadequacies of a system that has failed and bankrupt and forgotten millions of people in this country for way too long? Or instead of being mad at, say, some African American friends and neighbors who have repeatedly been lied to and poisoned and sterilized by doctors and scientists over many centuries in this country, because of entrenched systems of racism, who now say, well, why should I believe you this time? How about we express that anger instead at the systems of racism that keep perpetuating this condition? My point comes from the lesson of Moses. Channel what you need to say to the big rock, not to the people. Don't focus it on the people, but on the larger structures of our society that cause the distrust and the disinformation and the disease. Too many people are using angry and demeaning and divisive language these days on Facebook and everywhere else, when what we need to do is recognize that we are all connected by invisible strings. We are all in this together, whether we like each other or not. And we need to fight the problem at the source and not fight each other. Naming and blaming and shaming people is no way to change their minds. I know it's hard to believe that you can be in covenant with people who are so different from you. That you can be in community with people who have so many different beliefs. It works because there's a love beyond belief. And no matter what you're going through or who you're going through it with, you never go wrong when you meet them with love. I love you. Even when we disagree, I still love you. Amen. Thank you for joining us. For 100 years, All Souls in Tulsa has been a beacon of this free faith. We offer our services and programs freely online for all those who are interested. You can help us to do this by making a one-time gift today or a reoccurring pledge. We really appreciate you joining us and being a part of helping us make All Souls in Tulsa what it is. Thank you.
Can you hum with me? Again. Love is all you need. 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 Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me with all?